Hey everyone, it's great to be with you all again. Well, I think it's safe to say that we're about to hit some pretty out there territory when it comes to this next game. Whenever you ask someone what they actually think of Rez, they'll likely have a completely different story from the last person. I'm sure even my description of it is going to be different enough from the one that you thought up in your head. Part rhythm-based, part rail shooter, part out-of-body experience, part I have no idea what the hell just happened, but I loved every second of it experience. You get the idea. While critics and gamers did generally love this game and the experience it brought them, its sales were unfortunately not so great. But through determination on both the part of the fans and the developers, Rez saw multiple re-releases over the years, and continues to survive even in today's gaming market. But is it still worth playing, even after all this time? Let's strap in and find out just how well that Rez for the PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, PC, and now PlayStation 4 holds up today. Originally released in November of 2001, Rez is a game that's a bit hard to describe in one or two sentences. On one hand, it's a rail shooter, not too far off from games like Panzer Dragoon with its breakneck pace and system allowing you to target and fire on multiple enemies at once to build a high score. This makes sense due to the Panzer Dragoon development team being involved on this project as well. On the other hand, it's also a game heavily reliant on sound and musical cues to carry you along, with each shot or multi-shot impacting the sounds you hear throughout the stage's music. It also makes use of your controller's vibration function during each of the blasts in the game, as well as letting you know when you're about to run out of health and lose. Producer Tetsuya Mizuguchi advised that the goal of this experience was to give players a sense of what's called synesthesia. This refers to the idea of one of your cognitive pathways being stimulated in such a way that it produces an involuntary effect in a second cognitive pathway. The most common example refers to people associating numbers and letters with different colors, even though there was no such info given to make them think this way. You can certainly see just how this attempt was made, as ships appear out of darkness with all kinds of colors and effects emanating off of them, while other parts of the environment take strange forms and materialize. This is especially true in Area 5, but we'll get back to that later. The game's graphics during the time of their original release, all the way up to now, are simply stunning. Everything moves in such a silky smooth way, it's almost hard to believe this game came out on some of the platforms it did. It also helps that, being a rail shooter and not having to focus on actually moving the avatar, we're able to take in all of the game's visuals without interruption. The details of just how the game actually works are pretty minimal, but they are there. You play as a hacker who's trying to get into a malfunctioning AI known as Eden in order to wipe out enemies which are perceived as viruses and such. The goal of this is to wake up Eden, who allegedly went to sleep after feeling overwhelmed by all the knowledge of the world that it took in. Your character moves automatically and cannot be controlled. Your focus is to aim the target reticle both to shoot down enemies and prevent their shots from hitting you. You have a limited number of health points and pick up more by finding what's called progress nodes. As you capture more and more of these blue nodes, they will begin to level up your character. Getting hit by enemies will lower the level until you reach level 0 and die in the next hit. The first 4 areas have 6 of these transformations, while the 5th one has a special 7th form. The player can also collect override nodes, which are a red color to differentiate from the progress nodes. These allow you to use a special attack, whether for fighting or defending yourself from danger. As stated before, you can lock onto multiple enemies up to 8 times for a combo string, as well as to create some awesome musical cues. The areas progress in what's referred to as levels. As you reach certain points in each area, you'll see what's called a data node. Destroying one of these raises the stage up 1 level. Each time the level goes up, the stage around you changes and the music becomes slightly altered, usually adding in more instruments and building up the intensity of the sound. Your goal is to do this up to 10 times in order to reach a perfect analyzation rate at the end of the area. Once you reach the end of an area, you encounter a boss fight, each with their own unique form of attack methods and strategy to defeat. Some of these really threw me for a loop the first time I played, as I had no idea what I was supposed to do for each encounter, but I was excited to try and find out at the same time. The flow of the game remains pretty consistent in this sense, until Area 5. Area 5 isn't just a stage, it's an entire case study. This is where we begin to learn Mizuguchi's intentions and the true theme behind the game, conception. He refers to this stage and the experience of Rez as a whole to a journey we all lived through but don't have any memories of. He further elaborates, that's because it takes place before birth. Your avatar is a sperm cell traveling through this space in order to connect with an egg. Yes, your quest to Eden is far more than just a hacker defeating viruses. In this stage, you are now witnessing the birth of creation itself through a series of trees, animals, and other life coming into form while you are slowly given messages providing further context. The game's soundtrack also plays a large part here, as it makes effective use of the famous quote from Frank Herbert's Dune, "Fear is the mind killer." This, of course, means that by letting fear and emotion take control of you, it hinders your ability to think rationally and logically, thus enabling your own demise. Further into the stage, you begin to fight a series of boss battles, each with their own confusing patterns. In between each of these battles, your avatar is confronted with various questions about the meaning of life. The further in you go, the more dire and lonely the words become. After reaching the end, you finally confront Eden, which is in need of repair, but in order to do so, you need to fight one more giant battle. As you take down your targets, you begin to see Eden repair itself, with brief little scenes and pleasant synth sounds to go with it. The ending you get depends on how successful you were in repairing Eden to 100%. Once you reach this point, the music calms down significantly, and the credits begin to roll. Woo! Not since Stanley Kubrick's interpretation of 2001: A Space Odyssey has my mind been thoroughly blown like it was with this game here. The game's short 3 to 4 hour length didn't even faze me, as I found myself wanting to replay and revisit this experience again and again. Whether you go in with the goal of beating your previous scores or analyzation rates, or simply come back to replay the transcendent experience that is this game's story, I think you'll agree it's worth coming back to. It's not hard to see why the game has lasted this long through the various re-releases, even despite smaller sales figures. The gameplay continues to hold up just as well as it ever did, and likely always will, due to the only area needing any touch-ups to be the graphical presentation, which has always looked nice from the beginning. Although we never received a direct sequel to the game, Rez Infinite, the newest release of the game on both PS4 and PC, contains an original stage designed from the ground up called Area X. Not even going into the VR capabilities you have here, which I'm told are stunning, by the way, this stage actually allows you to move your avatar around in a full 360-degree plane for the first time in the game's history. It's clear that if Rez had ever received a sequel, it would have clearly gone in this fascinating direction, which only makes the lack of one all the more unfortunate. We also received a spiritual successor in the form of Child of Eden. While it may not be Rez in its name, the title absolutely carries the torch of its predecessor, and is just as worthy of checking out in my opinion. It's certainly similar in its gameplay style, but has many other differences in its execution and musical direction that I believe make it stand out enough to feel like its own separate product. Despite the lack of a true sequel, I do believe that Rez, even now, continues to hold up wonderfully. It's just one of those timeless games that never seems to get old no matter when you experience it. Rez Infinite only made that experience even better with the added level and features. Even if the gameplay in the original 5 stages failed to hold up, which thank goodness that's not the case, but if it did, these new enhancements would have still kept you wanting more. Despite the short length, this is a title that you will want to come back to again, and again, and again, and again. And that's going to do it for this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all again real soon.